Welcome to Introduction to International Business. I'd like to provide a little overview of globalization during this lecture. Let's jump right in by visiting the United States Census, and we're going to look at top trading partners as of November 2016 with the United States. Notice these are for goods only, and this is in billions of dollars. So if you look at the United States top trading partners, our top trading partner is China. We export $104 billion worth to China every year, yet we import an estimated $423 billion from China every year. So if we look at our overall trading partners, exports and imports combined, our top 5 trading partners are China, Canada, Mexico, Japan, and Germany. Let's scroll down a little bit and look at our top exporting partners. In other words, where do our goods go? The majority of our goods, or our largest recipient of our exports, is Canada, followed by Mexico, China, Japan, and the United Kingdom. The majority of our imports come from China, followed by those same countries. If you look at countries that export more than they import, you can see here the list of countries that have trade surpluses and trade deficits. So if you don't see us listed here, it's simply not because we don't have a surplus or a deficit, but it's because we're not one of the top 15 surpluses or deficits. So again, you can go to the U.S. Census Bureau and look at the United States top trading partners yourself. Next, I want to use as an example Vizio, a brand that you're probably familiar with. Did you know that the technology for flat panel televisions was developed in the United States in the 1960s? However, now in the Vizio headquarters in Irvine, California, really just about 100 people work there. Instead, virtually all of their production now takes place in lower cost locations. Why? Well, competition in this market is very intense, so they had to look for ways to cut costs. They developed some global supply chains. Again, remember that American-based Vizio gets the panels for its flat panel televisions from South Korea. It gets components for those televisions from China and processors from the United States. And then all of those things are sent to Mexico, where the actual assembly of the flat panel television happens. Who benefits from this? Well, obviously consumers benefit because they are getting a higher quality product at a lower cost. However, jobs in that industry are very precarious. I think this illustrates how there is no one single best production location, and how companies like Vizio are outsourcing its manufacturing, its logistics, and even some of its engineering work to gain flexibility, speed, innovativeness, and keep prices down so that they can compete in the global marketplace. Next, I'd like to take you to the World Bank website to look at some gross domestic product data and information. First of all, what is the World Bank? Well, the World Bank is a global institution that is trying to promote economic development throughout the world using low interest loans. Specifically, they want to end extreme poverty and boost prosperity throughout the world. So obviously the World Bank will be emphasizing most of its work within developing countries. So the first thing I'm going to take you to is a World Bank GDP ranking table, and I'm going to go here and open the PDF format of that. And this looks at the gross domestic product in 2015 and ranks various countries in the world. You'll note that the United States still has the largest gross domestic product because they have 18 million dollars. Get that? 18 million dollars, followed by China. And then you'll see some like 4, 5, 6. All three of those, Germany, the United Kingdom, and France, used to all three be in the European Union. So you'll hear some people talk about the growing European Union economy. However, in June of 2016, that all changed when the United Kingdom chose to leave the European Union. So I just wanted to show you some interesting information. We hear so much about China and how that is hurting the United States, but I want to point out that we still have the largest GDP as of 2015. That may have changed in 2016. So why do you hear so much about China? Well, because here I've gone to a website called Trading Economics, where it looks at not the actual GDP, but how much the GDP is growing in these countries each year. So you'll notice that India's economy is growing at 7.3% per year, followed by China's economy of 6.7% per year. The United States, you see, is growing only at a rate of 1.7% per year. So you can see how over time the overall GDP of China will surpass that of the United States if these growth rates continue to play out. Besides the World Bank, there are several other global institutions that affect world trade. The International Monetary Fund is similar to the Federal Reserve System within the United States, except that it functions for the world and it's a little less well organized. The United Nations focuses on peace, security, and human rights, while the World Trade Organization, formerly known as the General Agreement on Tariff and Trades, has focused on removing trade barriers and promoting world trade and ways to resolve trade disputes between countries. So we can visit the websites of these organizations. The IMF, here it talks about financial stability and monetary cooperation, kind of like we talk about the Federal Reserve taking care of monetary policy. Here's the United Nations, and it talks about after World War II, the world wanted peace. So that talks about the peacekeeping function of the United Nations. And then lastly, here's the World Trade Organization, and it deals with the rules of trade between nations. So it talks about trade agreements and negotiations and resolving trade issues between nations. So I want to end this segment by talking about really how since World War II we have seen declining barriers to trade. However, with this most recent election in the United States here in fall of 2006, we're not sure what's going to happen to barriers to trade. So it'll be an interesting semester to study international business.